Hi all, Harley and I very much enjoyed spending time with you today, building on our conversation from yesterday, and we're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow to continue the exploration of mindfulness and negotiation. You all have a lot of insight, you bring really good questions into the room, and we're looking forward to further tethering this to the craft of negotiation and the exploration of mindfulness. And as we really zeroed in on today, and will continue to, how the training of attention can help strengthen our awareness, and that awareness piece is where a lot of the action is. All right, recapping some of the primary pieces that we've explored. From getting to yes, the technique of the negotiation, we could say communication technique of moving from positions to interest. In particular, when you find that you and somebody else are differing in your position on what to do or when to do it, to ask the question why, or in some way to politely invite them sharing with you their reasons, their motivations, their interests, their needs, their wishes, why it is that they have that position. Because with every given position, there can be many interests underlying it, and that's where a lot of the movement can come from. The first negotiation piece by William Ury is this reminder that in many ways we will have, as was keenly brought out today in class, two negotiations going on, the negotiation with somebody else and the negotiation with ourselves. And so therefore, it might be useful to isolate that negotiation with ourselves, the me-gotiation, and become more skillful at tending to that. You know, today we talked about some very straightforward, commonplace negotiations that we can have, but sometimes those negotiations can be very, very consequential in terms of doing this or doing that, or the decision can weigh very heavily on us. And so how do we navigate these internal negotiations that can be so important when we are both parties, we could say? On the one hand, you think, well, we're everything we need. There's no point of opposition. So how can we clarify and clear the landscape to make that decision? And that's part of what we'll be exploring more fully when we address that internal negotiation. New rules, Chris Voss, and we'll come back to Chris Voss and Never Split the Difference, is talking about the importance of asking open-ended questions, of asking why, for example, or to ask what he calls the calibrated question. And we'll come back to that, and that's something to be bearing in mind as we move forward, because almost every interaction you have with somebody else can create the opportunity to experiment with this. Of course, part of the predicate for this, or the prerequisite rather for this, is that we have sufficient awareness in the moments that we're interacting with others to be able to then actually engage in the technique. And that's where the mindfulness piece especially is relevant. Now, we touched on Leonard Riskin's piece on the first day with the core concerns, and we zeroed in on appreciation. I mentioned today in class using appreciation, one of the core concerns, as a lens and a lever. So please look at his piece to understand how it is that appreciation can be used as a lens and a lever. It was something that we touched on today, but we're going to zero in on it on day 4. But as we work our way towards having a fuller conversation around this longer and very many moving parts, very, very insightful law review article, we're dropping in on portions of it along the way. So please look at using the core concerns as a lens and as a lever for our counterparty and for ourselves, and in particular with regard to one core concern, appreciation. All right. The piece on mindfulness training can improve cognitive performance that my colleague and I did with Special Operations Forces gets into the science. The handout today had a little portion that addressed the science, and the video for today of Amishi Jha talking with the group of law students about mindfulness and attention is something that we'll pick up on tomorrow. So if you haven't yet watched the video, you have an opportunity to do so today, and we will sort of get into the science of mindfulness and answer any questions that you might have around that. Importantly, attention is pivotal in this regard, and research on attention is pivotal, and then understanding what it is that we're doing with our attention in the focused attention practice and why becomes very, very relevant to have a deeper understanding of this project that we're calling Mindfulness and Mindfulness Practice. Today, we touched on the voice inside your head and this idea that we can be observing the voice. We can step back and observe the negotiation or just the thought we're having. It doesn't have to be a negotiation. It can just be, as was really powerfully, I think, talked about toward the end of class, our own internal conversation or just the thoughts that we have can be very important to see clearly and to learn from them, to discard them, to draw upon them, etc. And so the voice inside your head offers us a lot of insight in that regard. And it's pointing to, among other things, a mindfulness practice being one of the ways that we can cultivate that greater awareness. Importantly, mindfulness practices are not the only way, they're not necessarily the best way, but they are a pretty direct route in many people's experience. The mindfulness in medicine will look at that. That was the 2-pager on mindfulness in relationship to a physician talking with their clients. It's very relevant, patients. It's very relevant to a lawyer talking to their clients. The takeaway there for our purposes now is to practice do not interrupt. So this is a reminder between today and when we see each other again tomorrow to have it where in your conversations with others, you go in with this reminder, do not interrupt, and then see how it plays out. Importantly, tomorrow we're going to talk about how that can be a good technique. It's a listening technique, but it's not always a hard and fast rule. But as a mindfulness practice, it can prove to be very, very useful as its own standalone mindfulness practice. And in that context, being aware of the thoughts and feelings and sensations that we're having that are sort of impelling us. Harley said, it's very hard not to interrupt. Well, partly that's because of the constellation of thoughts, feelings, and sensations that are arising when we're resisting what somebody else is saying, as one example, and then we sort of lose track of things, and before we know it, we've interrupted. So it's a really wonderful opportunity to play with that and not take it too seriously, but it is serious business. The don't react, go to the balcony, that reminder of where we each sort of identified that we lean a little bit more towards the striking back, the giving in, or the breaking off, and to notice that happening. It's the noticing that is sort of front and center, the beginning of this exploration. It also carries us through the exploration, but without the noticing, there's not a whole lot that can follow in the ways that we're exploring the usefulness of practicing mindfulness, being more mindfully aware, and then being able to execute on the skills that we have and the things we've prepared for and the plans that we've set in motion. So notice when you find yourself feeling an impulse to strike back or to break off or to give in. Also, the life lessons from the poker table, a lot of great insights were talked about, came out of your readings on learning from failure and other items that she brings up, bluffing. And tomorrow we'll drop in specifically on what she thinks the fruits of the practice of mindfulness are. We'll also look at a little bit, and this will carry us forward throughout the rest of the week, the chapter 12 on negotiation, which is piecing together for us a lot of what it is that we're exploring from the getting to yes and the getting past no and the core concerns. So that chapter will help you put these things together that we're also exploring piecemeal. All right, so let's remember the stop practice. When you get to that stop sign, or you just put it on a Post-it to stop, take a breath, observe, and then proceed. Observe what? Well, that's entirely up to you. If you observe your breath, well, to do a 6-minute focused attention practice is really an extended stop practice. You stop, you sit, you breathe, you take a breath, aware of the breath, and you observe the breath. And when your mind wanders, you bring it back, and then you proceed. So practice stop in the short 10 seconds, 5 seconds here and there, and then also practice whether you want to stick with the focused attention practice, be it 6, 12, or 18 minutes, that's up to you. Or if you'd like to go on to the body scan, you may. But for the primary focus of the class, we're going to be hewing close to the focused attention practice so we can continue to experiment with it, explore it, and more fully understand why we're doing it and the benefits that it might be offering us. And then, lastly, D&D. You've got this. It's meant to be a reminder, right? So if you just have it somewhere, it go, oh yeah, my reminder to practice. It also, do not disturb can be a pleasant reminder and cue to somebody else that you are taking a little bit of time to practice. So if they see it on the door, they won't necessarily walk in. And, I'm a big believer that success leaves clues. And so here, somebody who has been doing this for a very long time is sharing with you what that cue is to practice mindfulness and the reminder to others, which is why we share it with you. All right. Looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Wishing you all a good day. Be well.